Hi, Skip here for Rockstar Sealing, the professional's choice in sealing systems. This is where I get to have a lot of fun and share my knowledge with you. This will be, over the next several minutes, an extension and add on to and drilling deeper into sealing, sealer selection, and proper application. It's an extension of our Beginner's Guide series. If you've never watched it, stop this right now, go back and watch them. If it's been a while since you've watched the Beginner Guide series, please go back and refresh it, because I'm going to be drilling deeper, extending into the more nuances, tricks of the trade, such that you have a problem-free sealer selection and then proper application depending upon the sealer and substrate and the job at hand. All right, so I'm asked by the do-it-yourselfer or those that are new to the trades or have been in the trades for a long time, hey Skip, how much sealer do I use? Here's my answer. What are you sealing? If you go back to the Beginner's Guide, we'll talk about various densities. For example, and the easiest way to explain this is start with the reference guide on the back of every Rockstar sealer, regardless of which one you are using. There will be a general indication of how much that should be used per square meter or square foot, right? Okay, that's a good general rule. These are all engineered and the chemistries are specific to the stones that they were designed to use. Now here's what happens in the real world. Depending upon the environment, the day, how much relative humidity, how dry it is, what you're sealing, is it indoors or outdoors, I always tell people the stone is going to tell you what it needs. As a general rule, and as we previously discussed, you're going to make an application. Within a certain time period, you're making a second application. Once it's all done, you're removing any and all residues. There are times when marble will absorb the best sealer, Rockstar sealer that you've chosen. Granite may take a little bit longer, or it may just go right into the stone. If you are getting that type of rapid absorption, you're going to add more. The key is within a 10 to 15 minute time frame, did you adequately place an appropriate amount of that sealer on there, whereby you start to see, by paying attention, that it's no longer being absorbed into the substrate. That is your clue. That's the light switch going off. Okay, I'm not getting any more absorption. I'm starting to leave a situation where it's saturated or overly saturated, and that's what you want to avoid. At that point in time, you've stopped adding your sealer of choice to the specific substrate, and then your next step is going to be removing excess and or, depending upon what you're working with, working it in and removing all remnants so that it can properly dwell and then subsequently cure. Dwell time. Let me address what dwell time really is, and then I'm going to get into water-based sealer versus solvent-based sealer. Dwell time is once you've applied either, it's the time that it takes for the sealer to start being absorbed into the various type of stone that you are sealing. Each has a slightly different dwell time and application rate, which you've learned in our beginner series. So dwell time is the amount of time that the sealer is sitting on the surface, it starts penetrating into the substrate, and it starts the process of molecularly bonding deeper within to that stone. Now, let's get specific. We're going to talk about our world-class water-based sealer, Green Star Sealer. Green Star Sealer, you're going to make your first application nice, clear, wet, even, continuous coating of that product on that stone surface, and at 10 minutes, you are going to apply your second coat. It is a wet on wet application. At the end of 10 to 15 minutes, if there's anything left over, you're removing it and then working it into the surface with your white pad, which you've learned about. That's your water-based dwell time application. Now, solvent-based, you are going to apply the same nice, even amount of solution to the surface and 10 to 15 minutes later, you're going to see what's left. Same thing's happening. That sealer is being absorbed into the substrate at the molecular level. It's starting to bond and encapsulating, creating a permanent water and oil repellency. At the end of 15, maybe 20 minutes, whatever's left, remove it, okay? Take any remnants off of that and let it dry 1 hour. Then you're going to come back and reapply in the same fashion, again, within a 10 to 20 minute period. At the conclusion of that 20 minutes, so pay attention, you are removing the remnants or residual liquid that is still sitting on the surface and removing it in its entirety. At that point in time, you have your initial dwell time for both the water-based and the solvent-based. Now you're evolving into cure time. Cure time can take 72 hours up to 4 weeks, depending upon the sealer. And during that time period, at least the first 24 hours, you don't want any activity. If it's a countertop, a floor, something outside in a hardscape, no activity for 24 hours. Therefore, you're good to go. You have accomplished the dwell time, you've accomplished or on your way to your cure time, and after 24 hours, your life is back to normal with a perfectly protected surface with the world-class products offered by Rockstar Sealing. Okay, let's talk about solvents. Without getting too complicated, I'll try to simplify it and yet make it well understood. Sealer technology is such that the chemistries involved in the sealers, many of them are not soluble in water, and therefore it needs a different solution upon which it can have its proper suspension, stay intact, and then have efficacy when it's applied. So if I look at solvent and I create an analogy, I would say the solvent is a bullet train, the sealer are the passengers, the train station is the substrate that you're sealing, so that the solvent is delivering the sealer upon which they are exiting the train and going on to the surface, whether that's a floor or a countertop, in a manner in which the sealer technology can be delivered into the stone. One last caveat to that is, as solvents outgas or evaporate, you get a push-pull effect whereby that sealer is now being drawn into that stone as opposed to simply migrating into the stone. So it's a far more effective delivery mechanism into that stone in a manner in which the sealer can be transported in a soluble fashion. Okay, and now, how do you go about sealing floors? And why do you seal floors? Well, it's the same thing. If you're sealing a countertop, you want to prevent damage from either water or oil. You want to protect the stone, and you want to make it easier to maintain over time. Same thing as in your kitchen floor, outdoor flooring, hardscape. If it's a commercial building, if it's a concrete floor or anything else, or a large hotel room, the application process is the same. We've already talked about this, but for our solvent-based sealing on a counter, we use a lamb's wool applicator. For our world-class water-based sealer, we're using a foam-based. When we move to floors, we're using a paint tray and subsequently something we can put a handle on so we're not on our hands and knees. If it's a solvent-based, we are using lamb's wool. Also, they make these foam-based pads as well that can be handled. Now, on a very large square footage project, we also absolutely routinely use a hand pump spray. Now, that can be quite overwhelming if you're looking at 5,000 square feet of open floor space, 10,000 square feet, the sum total of 50,000 square feet. How do I start? Well, you work your way from farthest out and set your flooring square footage up like a checkerboard. Start in a section that you can manage based upon your dwell time and subsequent cure time that we talked about previously. You want to manage the grid and move to the next grid, then move to the next grid and sequence through. You can do that manually for the maximum control, or you can use your spray, right? Now, what we do, here's a trick of the trade, is if we're spraying with a fan tip sprayer, we're always having a second technician walk behind, such that as we are applying the sealer, we can create continuity and consistency of application by smoothing that sealer out on the substrate, regardless of what it is, concrete, granite, marble, etc., etc. Everything else stays the same. Well, I hope this was informative. Thanks for tuning in and watching. You know, I've been telling people now for a while, have no fear, Rockstar Sealing is here. These are world-class products. I've talked about this earlier in some videos and previously in the other ones that I've done. I'm not just a Rockstar guy, I'm a stone restoration professional with a company in Southern California, and I use these products exclusively for the following reason. Number one, from a cost to benefit ratio, they're world-class. Number two, they have extraordinary efficacy. I know they're going to work. Number three, and most importantly, whether you're a do-it-yourselfer or a business in the trade like I am, you want the customer to be absolutely thrilled with the result. Otherwise, why are you in business? So, start employing Rockstar Sealing technologies. Come back and visit us again as we will continue to add content towards the objective of making you completely comfortable with using these world-class products. Until next time, thanks for tuning in.